A successful calving season is a goal of every cow-calf producer across the country. As with any enterprise, planning, preparation, and implementation are paramount to success. A live calf that not only thrives, but also survives from birth to weaning is critical to not only profitability, but also production of a safe, wholesome, tender, and flavorful beef supply for consumers. Welcome to this edition of the Beef Roundtable. I'm Dr. Ron Lemonade, your Beef Extension Specialist at Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. The Beef Roundtable is recorded live and edited to fit the time constraints of the program. The programs are available at the Beef Magazine website, youtube.com, as well as www.beefroundtable.com.
And I'm Bert Rutherford, Senior Editor of Beef Magazine in Amarillo, Texas. Our first guest for today's Beef Roundtable is Blake Angell. He's a cattle rancher and partner in Lundgren Angus Ranch, located in Gove in western Kansas. He's been a cattle buyer for Meyer Natural Angus for the last 10 years. Blake received his bachelor's degree from Colorado State University, and previously he worked as the commercial marketing director for the Red Angus Association of America.
Our second guest is Dr. Larry Horstman, DVM and emeritus professor at Purdue University School of Veterinary Medicine. Dr. Horstman is a board-certified theriogenologist and has a very successful embryo transfer business and steed stock operation with his son Joe, which operate under the name of Horstman Cattle Company. He has received numerous awards, including the 2011 PVM Alumni Faculty Award for Excellence and the 2013 Indiana Beef Cattle Association Outstanding Young Cattleman.
Doc, one of the most difficult decisions, I think, from a producer standpoint, when you're out there trying to assist your cows, particularly your heifers, calving, is when do you intervene?
That's a great question, and I read a lot of things about the first stage of labor should take this long, the second stage, the third, and I'm not a big one to put a time frame on any of it. First of all, it's hard to tell when the first stage of labor starts and when, so you don't know how long that cow's been at that or that heifer. So I think the key word is progress. If you look at that cow now and she's walking around with her tail out and she has that pump handle tail, and you look at her a half hour later and you start to see the water bag, and look at her again and you see some feed, and she's progressing. I don't get too concerned, but I guess the key word is progress. If she isn't progressing from one stage to the next, then you need to intervene. And Colorado State did some great work many years ago with looking at early intervention in a group of heifers. What they did was, as soon as that heifer looked like she was getting ready to calve and was walking around with her tail out and had, they saw a water bag, they ran there in the chute and pulled the calf, delivered the calf. And they found that the livability, survivability of those calves was better. The cows bred back quicker, better. Their conception rate was better. Just every parameter was better, and so I don't think you can intervene too early, provided two things. Number one, you're clean about it when you examine that cow. You wash her up, you clean her up, so you're not carrying a bunch of manure and infection into that uterus. So and you use lots of good lubrication. And number two, that she is adequately dilated. If that cervix is completely dilated and that calf's laying up there in the proper position, why, go ahead and get that calf out of there, and you're gonna help the cow, and maybe even get more sleep for yourself too. So I don't think you can intervene too early. You can sure intervene too late. But the primary thing is, number one, be clean about it, and number two, make sure that she is adequately dilated, that cervix is dilated, and everything is ready to go. So I would rather err on the side of too early than too late. We know what happens when you err on the side of too late. So
Well, and the other challenge with that is when you're a seed stock producer like Blake, you know, if you go in and you pull a calf and now you record that, you know, in your purebred breed registry, now all of a sudden that changes, you know, the calving ease, EPDs, and those things that come into play. So, Blake, let me ask this question. If a producer is going to provide assistance, how do you handle getting the cow that's not making progress into the chute, and then how do you prepare for providing assistance?
Well, Ron, we're going to be a little bit unique in our cows in that as a seed stock operation, our cows are very familiar with the chute and with our facilities. So that is an advantage for us. We've spent a lot of time and attention to our facilities. We have chutes indoors. And so as we have brought those cattle up close around our main facility and we're observing those, if we find a female that's having some difficulty or maybe taking a little longer than what we feel is the proper time, then we will very quietly and patiently ease that cow out of the group she's in and up into the barn where we can catch her head in a restraint, and then we will right there because we're in our barn, we've got all access to all of our equipment and our examination sleeves and lubrication, and so we'll then take the appropriate time to examine that female, make sure that the placement of the calf is proper, and if not, obviously we will intervene at that point and do what we can. We are going to pretty quickly make a decision whether or not this is a situation that requires more than our attention. And if that is the case, we are fortunate to have a vet accessible to us in a fairly close proximity, and we will make that determination pretty early on to ensure that the welfare of the calf and the cow is taken into firstmost decision.
Doc, if a cow's been in labor for an extended period of time and the water bag is broken, she might be dry. What lubricants do you recommend to use to help ease that calf out?
There's lots of different commercial lubricants on the market. There's one called J-Lube, which is a very, very good product. It's a powder that you add water to, and it is really slick, very, very slick, and mimics the amniotic fluid as well as anything that you can use. And you know, I think a lot of people don't realize that a cow actually has two water bags. When you see a cow getting ready to calve and you see a water bag out, and you know, I'll have people call me and say, well, she's already ruptured her water bag, and I don't get too concerned because I don't know if it's the first water bag is usually that's just urine. That's the allantois, and that just contains urine and really doesn't add anything to the lubrication of that reproductive tract. The second water bag that calf is encased in is the amnion, and that has the nice slick lubrication. And if that one's ruptured and all those fluids are gone, then things can be a little more dry. But I think no matter what, you should always use good lubrication, because by not losing lubrication, you're going to cause irritation and swelling to that reproductive tract, and whenever you do that, you're going to narrow it. You're going to cause more friction when you're trying to get that calf through there. And so it's always a good idea to use some type of lubrication, whether it just be plain old soap, any type of soap. I like betadine scrub, which has some disinfectant properties to it, and it's nice and slick. The big problem, our surgeons in our large animal clinic here at Purdue, they get all nervous when they hear about that you've used J-Lube, because there's some research that says that it can cause a heck of a peritonitis in an animal if you spill some of that into the abdomen. And most of that work was done in the horse, and the horse, they're more likely to develop problems after a C-section than a cow is. So I think if if you use J-lube, I don't get so concerned about it. I've done plenty of C-sections after J-lube and not really had a problem with it. But you will hear that. But most of that work was done with the horse, and we know what a wimp a horse can be sometimes when it comes to infections in the abdomen. So I'm letting my bias show here, but that's. But the moral of the story is definitely use some type of lubrication, whether it just be plain old bar soap or something that's slick.
Blake, whenever you go in and you're examining a cow, what are you feeling for?
Well, I think we've all seen the diagrams of what the normal presentation should be, and what we all are hoping and wishing that every cow will present her calf in that manner, and that is to find the two front legs and laid out in front of themselves with the head right above it. That's the normal flow of the calf coming out without any difficulties. As we reach in, at times we can find one leg and a head and a leg down, or obviously the one of the worst case situations is when you start finding back, feet, and tail. If we've got a situation where we examine a female and we've got one front leg down, or maybe even two front legs down, we'll try to see if we can reposition those legs, get that calf into the appropriate position, and then maybe give some assistance to that calf and go ahead and get that calf on out of there. As I mentioned earlier, we're not going to struggle with that calf or that cow for very long if we feel like the presentation and the position of the calf is such that we're going to need some assistance. We're going to have our vet on speed dial, and we're going to intervene fairly quickly. I know that's not the luxury of every producer, but we do have a vet that's very close proximity to our main ranch headquarters where we do our calving, and so we will utilize him to ensure that we eliminate as much stress as possible both on the cow and that newborn calf.
Larry, let me follow up with a question on that. You and I have talked about, how the leg, the joints in the leg are, the hoof pads up, hoof pads down. You want to make any comments on that?
Yes. I've been delivering calves for 40 plus years, and I still can't tell the difference between a hock and an elbow on a calf. A hock and an elbow feels exactly the same to me. But I think there's a really easy way to tell whether you're dealing with a hock or an elbow, and that's just to count the number of joints. If you're talking about the hock, there's only one joint, the fetlock joint, before you get to the hock. If it's a front leg and you're palpating the elbow and you should be looking for a head, as Blake said, you have two joints. You have the fetlock joint and the carpus, or the knee joint. So there's two joints before you get to that elbow or hock or whichever you think it is. So that kind of helps. The real puzzler is when you have a set of twins, one's frontwards and one backwards, and you're trying to match those up. And it's nice to be able to count the number of joints and know whether you're dealing with a front leg or a back leg. One question I'd like to ask Blake is, how many calves do you see that are born backwards? I know your alma mater, CSU, published a paper many years ago that a lot of people refer to, and it says that 4% of the dystocias are due to malpresentations, and that 3/4 of those are due to backwards calves. And I don't know. I think it's. I mean, I've read the paper, and I don't deny all the data, but boy, it just seems like I get called to most of the backwards calves, and so I see more of those. But from your experience on your operation, how many of your calves are born backwards, or do you keep track of that, or do you have a feel for that?
We don't. I can't say that we've recorded or documented it. Interestingly enough, in 2015 calving season, my father-in-law and I, as we discussed it, indicated that we had a much higher incident, or it seemed as if we were having a higher incident. The reality is that I have sat there and watched certain cows on their own without any assistance have a calf backwards. And so I don't know if it's always something that we could record and know for sure on 100% of the situations, how many of those there are. We've been pretty fortunate where we're with them around the clock. We have, my father-in-law has spent a lifetime working with his cattle and takes that very seriously. Losing a calf at birth is something that's not enjoyable for anybody. My father-in-law takes it especially hard, and so he has instilled in me that we will be with these cattle on a very regular basis, ensuring that that we achieve the objective of a live calf on each cow. I will say that we had a really unique situation here just about a week and a half ago. We had our first set of triplets, all alive, unassisted, and at last check, as of last evening, all were doing fine.
Oh, good.
Doc, if the calf does need to be repositioned, what procedures do you recommend to make the process easier, both on the calf and on the person trying to correct the malpresentation?
Well, first of all, I would want that cow standing up. If I'm going to reposition that calf, it's much easier to reposition it with the calf in the standing position rather than laying down. Now, to say that I'm going to once I get it into position, I would rather that cow lay down when she calves. But to say that I'm going to lay every calf down and put a rope on her and cast her down, I don't do that. Most cows will lay down when you start to put some traction on them. But I would rather they did lay down. It's kind of like I tell my producers, if you have a 55-gallon barrel and you have a 100-pound sack of feed in the bottom of that 50-pound barrel, what's the easiest way to get that 100-pound sack of feed out of that barrel? Well, the easiest way to do it would be to tip that barrel over, lay it on its side, and drag it out, rather than trying to pull it up and out of the barrel. So I think that it's it's much easier to pull that calf and to get it out if the cow is laying down. But to say that I'm going to lay them all down, I don't. But I do want them standing if I'm going to reposition it. It just lets that calf fall down in that uterus, and it gives you more room. And then there's some other things we do. We use epinephrine, which will relax the uterus. If you're having trouble repositioning a calf, if it's been going a while, that uterus starts to really clamp down on that calf, and it's tough to get enough room to maybe reposition a head or a leg or especially those breech calves. But some epinephrine will help relax that uterus. Sometimes I'll use an epidural to relax that cow, and so she's not pushing and straining while I'm trying to manipulate that calf. I will use an epidural. The only problem with that is she's not going to. If you give her an epidural, she's not going to help you when you do get it repositioned. But and that's a problem. So I'm not a big user of epidurals, but I've sure gone home with enough bruises on my arms with a cow straining and pushing on you when you get your arm trapped between the pelvis and that calf's head or whatever part you're trying to reposition. That I will occasionally use an epidural for that purpose.
Doc, do you ever use a twine or a rope or anything to kind of help pull a leg up while you kind of cup your hand underneath the hoof so that it doesn't tear the uterine wall?
Oh, I primarily use chains. I know some people use like the straps, but I use a chain because I'm going from farm to farm, and those chains are easier to disinfect and to keep clean, and so you're not transmitting some problem from one farm to another. So that's the primary reason I use chains, just because they are easier to disinfect and keep clean. But I see nothing wrong with using twine or the straps, on your farm where you're using them on your cows. But I'm a fan of the chain.
Blake, if the internal examination indicates that the calf needs to be pulled, how do you go about handling chain placement on that foot?
Yeah, so we're gonna, once we get in and examine that, we want to get that calf positioned so those two front legs are laying out frontwards, and then we're going to go in and I think it's very important that the producer not get in a hurry here. I know that at the point that you've assessed a cow and you've determined that there's assistance needing to be provided to get that calf out, I know the anxiety level starts to escalate a little bit in the producer. And so I think it's important to just take a moment and make sure that you don't try too hard, too quick, and get those chains in the inappropriate place, and result in some potential damage to that calf that you're trying to get out alive. And so, we'll want to make sure those legs are positioned properly, and we want to make sure that we get those chains, up above that dew claw, and make sure that sometimes that's going to require you to kind of push in there a little bit further and kind of get up in there a little bit. But we want to make sure that we get those chains positioned properly so that as we begin to apply the pressure to help assist get that calf out, obviously our intention is to for the welfare of the cow and the calf both, but we want to make sure that we're positioning ourselves properly so that in an attempt to get that calf out, we're not going to do some damage to that calf's front legs or its mobility once we get it out and save it. Proper position, right up there above that dew claw, making sure that those chains are in the appropriate place so that we can get those calves pulled out without damage to that front leg.
Doc, let me follow up with that one. Talk about the bone physiology at the end of that leg, okay? And if you hook inappropriately, what's going to happen?
Well, if you're going to break a calf's leg, you're going to break it at the growth plate, and on the front leg, the growth plate is just above that first joint, and so the idea is to put that chain above the dew claw, and then throw a half hitch below it, and that helps to keep that growth plate together. And if you put it just below, you may break that leg at that growth plate, and that's the most common place that you can do that. So the double hitch just distributes that weight more evenly and causes less pressure on that foot and that leg, and you're less likely to break that growth plate if you double hitch that leg, whether it's coming frontwards or backwards. Yeah.
Now, some people will say, that you need to put the chain underneath the foot so that it kind of comes up between the dew claw or between the hooves. Some people like to go over the top. Some people like to go over the side. What's the right way?
My preference is that it should go on the side. Either outside or inside, I don't really care which side, but the loops, they should pull up on the side. So when you're pulling on the angle, you're not putting any bend on that fetlock joint itself. So I put it on the side, and I don't care right side or left side, and I'm flexible there. It's just like laying a cow down too. Some people say lay her down on the right side or lay her down on the left side. If she's going to lay down, she can lay down on any side she wants to. I don't care. I'm not going to roll her over or change her, and so I'm not concerned about that. So,
Doc, if you're pulling a calf, do you want that calf standing up or do you want her down? And then how much traction pressure should you apply, and how much time should you take to get that calf out?
Well, the rule of thumb that people have used for years is you shouldn't pull any harder than what two people can pull. But with a calf jack or a fetal extractor, you can sure put a lot more than what two people can pull. You can put a ton of pressure on on a calf, and that's too much. So you need to use a calf jack with caution. It's a great tool. I wouldn't want to practice without my calf jack, especially the older I get. But it sure is a great tool. And I would rather that cow be laying down. But like I say, I'm not gonna, if it's just a malpresentation and that calf's not that big, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time laying her down, or I'm just gonna deliver the calf and get it out. So, but I think you need to go about it, as Blake said, don't get in a great big hurry. You want to take your time. You want to let that reproductive tract dilate to allow that calf to come through. When you get it out, once you get the chest out, if the calf's coming front end first, once you get the chest out, I like to roll that calf up on its side so it's coming out sideways, because the pelvis in the cow is bigger from top to bottom than it is from side to side, so that fetal pelvis is going to fit through the maternal pelvis much easier if it's laying on its side. So I roll that calf on its side, and I still go slow with it. I want that uterus contracting behind that calf so that you don't cause a uterine prolapse. You can actually pull on a calf out so quickly that you can actually suck that uterus inside out. When a cow prolapses, what happens is that uterus is turned inside out, just like when you take your sock off and turn it inside out. You can pull on a calf so rapidly that you can actually suck the tip of that uterine horn up in the uterus, and then as she continues to push and strain when she's trying to get rid of the afterbirth, or just pushing and straining on that calf, then the uterus can follow. So as Blake said, you need to go slow with it. Just take your time. Once you get that calf's head out and get him started out, it's you don't have to be in a great big hurry with those calves. You have some time.
Doc, when we've got a hard pull, it seems like we have more retained placentas. Okay, so what's the ramifications of a retained placenta, and how do we handle that if we do get one?
Yeah, well, we do see more retained placentas with a hard pull, and I think it's just a matter of muscle fatigue. That uterus is a muscle, and it's tired, it's fatigued, it's pushed, and it's on that calf so hard, and then I don't think you get the contractions and get the separation of that placenta like you would like. Every dystocia, I always give these cows oxytocin. I give them a couple of cc's of oxytocin. I don't care how you give it, IV, sub-Q, IM, just get it in them. I always used to tell my students, give it IC in the cow. I don't care how you give it. Just get it in them. But I don't think you need 5 cc's like the bottle says. I did some uterine motility studies way back 40 years ago here at Purdue, where we looked at uterine motility after various products, and we found that a big dose of oxytocin causes a great big spasm in that uterus, where a smaller dose, a 2 cc dose, you get nice rhythmic contractions, which is more physiological. So a smaller dose of oxytocin, I think, does help to decrease anyway that retained placenta problem.
That about wraps up this edition of the Beef Roundtable. Bert and I would like to thank our guest, Mr. Blake Angell, seed stock producer from Western Kansas, and Dr. Larry Horstman, veterinarian and board-certified theriogenologist from West Lafayette, Indiana. Please join us again next month for another Beef Roundtable discussion. It's going to be a great program. Until next time, Bert and I hope you have a safe and rewarding month.